Welcome back, everybody. And on this week's show, I'm going to be interviewing the incredible graffiti artist Kilo from the UK, who started, getting his, started practicing and dabbling with Graff around 1983. So we're going to be talking about, Kilo's inspirations, how he got into Graff, also being a b-boy, because it wasn't just graffiti. Kilo was also a wicked b-boy as well. And I spoke to Kilo. He's also going to be going into his photographic archives, and what we're going to do at the end of this interview, we're going to have a selection of a load of his old photos, which is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. So whatever you do at the end of this interview, don't go anywhere and check out the slideshow of his old photographs. And whatever you do, subscribe to this channel, press subscribe, and check out all the other wicked interviews I've done. All right? But anyway, I hope you enjoy this. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Peace. Lights, camera, action. On this week's show, we have B-Boy from back in the day and also Graff artist from the FBA Sinstars crew, the Xmen crew, and also some other incredible crews as well. We got the highly talented Kilo. How you doing, my man?
Very good, man. Good to be here again. Very good.
We just turn this fan off. Yeah, no, it's great to see you. And like, this is the second time you've come on board to do this, because the first time we done this, we met in the cab over 2 years ago, and it was like thunder and lightning, and the sound quality of the interview was pretty poor, wasn't it? So
it was different, that's for sure.
And you was like a drowned rat, like in the back of the cab.
I was. Yeah.
But listen, it's an absolute honour, my man, having you come back to do the interview again. So I'm really looking forward to chatting to you. What we're going to do, we're going to take it back to the root, back to where it all kind of started for you. So kind of how it rolls, Kilo. The first question, or two questions I always ask, is whereabouts are you from, and what was it like growing up as a youngster?
Yep. Well, I mean, my origins, pre-hip-hop, were in southwest London. I was born in Morden. I had to think about that. Don't know why. Yeah, I was born in Morden, but I was raised in like Fulham, Putney, Roehampton, all around that sort of area. So SW 15 to 18-ish. Went to school in a place called St Mark's in Fulham. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately because things would have turned out differently, obviously. In 1983, my family decided to relocate to Exeter in Devon, which was good. I mean, I had some good times down there, don't get me wrong, but I always felt that I was missing out on London. And obviously, if you think about the year 1983, it's kind of like a pinnacle year for but for like hip hop to evolve in the UK.
100%. I mean, it was a very tiny scene, but the impact, I would say, probably of, like you may do as well, like the Buffalo Girls video, seeing the graffiti, the scratching, the breaking, the b-boying, that's when it really started to spark off.
Definitely. I mean, this is the thing, like I say, we moved down to Exeter. I had a young sister at the time, so I think my mum just wanted to get us out of the city, and we quickly had cable TV in school. So fortunately, I was able to have like MTV and all those videos you mentioned, World's Famous Supreme Team, Nucleus even. I remember the Nucleus video was on rotation, Rockbox, Run DMC, all of those things like just not reconnected me, but kept me connected to hip hop, because Exeter had a scene, but it was different to the one I was used to, Well, it's still very early days, mind you.
And what kind of music was you growing up on, as a really as a right youngster? I mean, was you watching things like Top of the Pops and like watching, getting some, I mean, most of Top of the Pops, most of it was absolutely crap. But every now and again, there was like a quality tune, like
Do you know what? Top of the Pops, that kind of like comparison makes me think of it for me. And I've been reading a friend of mine who I kind of came up with in the Exeter days. He's done a couple of books, and one of them's about rural hip hop and how it blossomed. And if you lived rural, which obviously I did at the time, one of the major factors of keeping connected was John Peel on Radio 1. And the thing is, if you ever listened to that show, you had to listen to just a ton of eclectic nonsense And then every show there'd be like 2 tunes, maybe throughout a 2 hour or 1 hour, however long it was. But you had to stay up just to catch those tunes, and they were always like completely unheard of, you know, like Z3 MCs before they became big kind of thing. So that's all we had. So yeah, Top of the Pops is very similar, like you say, just to sift through all the rubbish to kind of find the gems, you know.
And I was going to say to you, you know, for you, what kind of element of hip hop came first? Was it like the b-boying, or was it like tagging and Graff?
Well, I think it was really like a lot of people from those years, it was kind of everything mixed together. I gravitated towards graffiti first and foremost, but at the same time, I was also gravitated towards b-boy and breaking. I even dabbled in like DJing and rapping, but I was crap at both of those, so I kind of left that for the pros. So yeah, it was very, very kind of like packaged orientated to me, you know. But I would say graffiti had the slight edge. You know, I found that easier than any of the other elements, if you like. Yeah.
And was you kind of dabbling in a bit of tagging and a bit of graphing, like, you know, 1983? Is that when you kind of first put your name up, your first your first mark on a wall?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've got it. Oh, I might have. Hold on. I was basically, like most others, I started illegally. I was tagging, I was going out, I was hitting buses, I was hitting track sides, trains, whatever I could kind of physically get to. And that was, I started in 1983, but that was predominantly on paper. I did do a little bit, but it was like nothing significant, you know. So 84 is kind of like the year that I really got out with paint, if you like, seriously. Although I did start in 83. This is like one of my old piece books. Like, I used to write Raz.
What did you do that with, a torch pen?
Yeah, this is like one of those old torch pens with like sprayed background. This is the piece book, so inside there you'll see like there's characters and shit, cartoon characters. I'll try and find something. Yeah, look, I mean, you can tell from the styles. There's a Zulu piece that, you know, and that was like, that was 1985, but most of the stuff in here is 85 onwards. But it's very generic, like, you know, that kind of stuff.
You know, I absolutely love looking at, you know, that kind of era of Graff. I mean, to be honest, for me, looking at a piece, that is what I prefer to look at, that kind of style.
Yeah. Well, I like to see, I mean, I've posted recently on social media about all of this, but I like to see an artist's, a writer's progression. You know, and a lot of people, they denounce all their early stuff, and I'm like, why would you do that? You know, it's like that's as important as what I do now, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be doing what I do now. You know, you got to be able to track back your history and be proud of it as well, I think.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And Kilo, can you tell me? Let's stay on the Graff thing for a little while. Can you tell me who was inspiring you? You know, on the graffiti side, from the UK and also from the US, from New York.
Yeah, I mean, talking UK, I was fortunate because my cousin, Zeus, he's like an old school Southwest London writer from the times, you know, pre me, obviously, and he was writing when Mode 2 was writing RTS or RTs or whatever he called it. So he was an inspiration. In addition to him, when I moved down to Exeter, there was a guy called Wiz. And I forgot about him last time, I think, but he was like very, very instrumental as well, because he was out there doing full colour track sides and stuff like that, and already had a style, you know. So that was kind of pretty mad to see, because obviously didn't even know there was writers in Exeter at the time. They were, and then you had the obvious UK ones like a little later, which are like Casby, Rio 2, all the big names. I was mainly focused on West London as opposed to South East or anywhere else, you know. I was a bit ignorant of all the other areas.
But one thing is, Kilo, is when we think about it, looking back, I mean, I'm from South East London, so I was repping like the Supreme team, you know, like Tough Arts, London Giants, but really back probably around 85, it was still kind of developing in their own areas. It wasn't until like probably Covent Garden and maybe the Westway and all that, where, you know, we started seeing like everybody kind of piecing up in the one area.
Definitely, yeah, that's very true. And it was, and like you said, it was very territorial. I mean, I used to travel from like my nan's place in Roehampton, and I'd literally get a travel card and by myself with a little 110 camera. I'd probably have read Blues and Soul like the day before, and then I'd head off to like Dollis Hill area in search of Image 4 pieces. And like I was walking around some of these estates I had no idea about the history of, you know, where they'd been like full on police getting hacked to death and all sorts of shit going on. But I was just a naive little toy desperately trying to seek out Graff. And in terms of the American scene, it's very generic. Like, you know, I gravitated towards Dondi and Scene and all the big names, obviously. That's why when I got kind of invited to rep for FBA back in, I think it was 2011, that for me, that was like, it's kind of like playing football in a Sunday league and then having your national team ask if you want to rep for them, you know? Because that the car in Subway Up, you know, the Shark, the Sab K's car, it's like an infamous car. That car blew me away when I saw that. The styles, the imagery, the whole concept. So to then find myself kind of playing ball with them, it was amazing. Just, you know, big moment in my career.
I mean, looking back on it, you know, I mean, in '83 it was a very tiny scene. Hardly anyone. It was really underground. But come '84, when Subway Art come out, you know, that blew everybody's mind. I mean, we was kind of mimicking their style as well in '84 because Subway Art it had such a like impact.
Definitely, yeah. That's the thing, you know. My real name is William, so obviously on the Subway Art book you've got the Billy piece, and I kind of gravitated towards that and probably bit that hard and then tried to redefine it. But I think that the difference between getting onto your point, the difference between like what we did back then to what a lot of people do now is like we reinterpreted what we saw. You know, we didn't just take a straight bite and then kind of put it out as our own piece of work, because that was a no-no and could get you in a lot of drama for that, you know.
So yeah, you know, Subway Art had such a big impact on us, but as you said, you know, we wasn't trying to bite the style, but what we was trying to do is kind of put our kind of little twist on those pieces. Yeah,
this is the thing, you know, biting within hip hop, as you know yourself, is just one of the no-nos, you know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, now with social media and everything else, it's so much easier to see when somebody is biting, you know. Obviously back in the day you could probably get away with like biting something, painting it somewhere, making it out to be your own, because if those people didn't know, then they'd just take it as granted. But now hip hop is all about creativity, you know, so you can be inspired, certainly, and I am, you know, and have been over the years, but to straight bite is just nah.
That's a no-no. Yeah,
definitely.
Can you remember like the first piece that you done?
It's my memory's a bit hazy, but I did I don't think I've got a picture of it here now. I did like a one colour outline illegally on some boards in Exeter that said the Funk Master. I used to write funk. No, actually it said Nitro. Get my names right. I was writing Nitro at the time. But I also did a few pieces like in a car park, which was like a multi-story car park in Exeter. And one of them said Panic, but it wasn't the Panic off of the book, but maybe the name was from there, you know. And the other one said Vow, I think, and they're probably some of the earliest pieces I've got. I think they were 1984. Very crude, do you know what I mean? Nothing to look at, but it's history, and I'm proud of it, you know.
And what was you using, like car plan?
Yeah, car plan, Duplicolour, you know, that's all we had pretty much. I think I didn't even know about Smooth Right before then, you know, that was way before Smooth Right days.
And what would you say, in your opinion, what does it take to be, you know, a great writer?
Well, you know, like we've been saying, I think originality, creativity, definitely originality first and foremost, I would say. But what I mean by that is I don't mean you have to come out with a completely new twist on graffiti. I just mean your style should be recognizable, you know, like if I write your name, if I did a Steve piece, for example, I'm pretty sure most people would be able to tell that it was me that did it. That, I think, is a sign that you're kind of on the right wavelengths, you know what I mean? Also, knowledge is an important thing, I think. Being able to like know about your history, about graffiti's history, because it's very rich, as you know. And, you know, a lot of people, it frustrates me when I see a lot of the new writers who like come up. They either come out. I saw today. I saw somebody come up today on Instagram. I was looking, and somebody's writing. This is controversial. This somebody's writing Rough, R-O-U-G-H, right? So I know he's a controversial character to start with. If you speak to certain people, you'll get a different opinion. Regardless of that, there was a Rough in London who I can't imagine people don't know of, at least in London. And this guy's from London. So it's like, how can you use the name Rough when that Rough is still writing? But the fact that someone's using that name, I've seen people from London writing Cope. I mean, I'm not talking about Cope the MC, but graffiti guys. I've seen a writer writing Coma. I mean, how can a new school London writer use the name Coma? New York, obviously, like you say, it's got a very rich and in-depth history, but the UK has as well. You know, there's things here that have happened over the years, which I don't think a lot of people who are into hip hop perhaps even realise. You know, like the old days, like you've mentioned. I only went to Covent because I wasn't living in London. I only got there like a couple of times, and not for any of the big meetings. It was just on a Saturday, regular day kind of thing. Spats, things like that. You know, again, only got there a couple of times. I was out of the area, but a lot of people don't even know about that, Spats in particular. And that's just one of the more known kind of areas. You know, I know there was a lot of other places that were vibrant back in the day, hip hop wise.
And listen, Kilo, this is the important thing about these interviews, because doing these interviews, you know, hopefully the younger generation can watch these kind of interviews and, you know, and learn from it, you know, learn from the elders.
Yeah, definitely. Even for people like myself, you know, people in our years, there's still, when, like you're saying, you're talking to people from the South Bronx, you're talking to originators, pioneers, people I haven't even heard of sometimes. And it's like, you know, wow, it just kind of brings, the world is a much smaller place, and it's, you know, yourself and other people that are doing these sorts of things, it's very relevant, and like you say, it's a historical document in a sense.
100%. I mean, when I interviewed Scheme, like he was telling me about the buff spot, and the buff spot is where people would like have like hair gel or whatever, like grease in their hair. It would rub against the you know, where the inside of the train. It would rub off the old tag. And that was called the buff spot, and then they'd re-tag over the buff spot.
I never knew that. That's mad.
Yeah, and also about the trains, like the trains in the oceans, like they put like the old trains in some of the old trains in the oceans.
Yeah, that's mad. There's a lot of images online where you can see them actually like send them and that. Because they did that to create sanctuaries for like fish and stuff. I have to get that name for it now. But because it worked well with the coral, and all that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, wicked.
So you know, we are ourselves. We are still learning, you know, little bits and pieces, you know, and you know, it's incredible. And we'll still be learning probably in another 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, you know, like we are all still students. I think sometimes people can get ahead of themselves and they think that they're the be all and end all of everything, but it's like there's always new things to learn. And even like subway art, you know, in the UK and Europe, we regarded subway art as the Bible, and you know, I still do, because it was a massive thing for me. But when you meet the New York guys, you'll hear a whole different story, you know, and a whole different interpretation, and then you find all these other things that were happening and were going on at the same time, but just got overlooked because they weren't in the book, you know.
Big time. And you had the originators of like the style of taggings from Washington Heights. Like your Tacky 183s, the Mike 171s, SJK, and you know they was getting their names up, you know, like in the late 60s.
Yeah, but even like you said, you had the whole evolution of style. Like for someone outside of New York, we call it like the New York style. But the New York style consists of hundreds of styles. You know, you've got, like you said, you've got the Broadway style, you've got Queen style, and that's just talking about tagging and hand styles before you even look at pieces, you know. Yeah.
Going back to UK, I mean, for me, looking well, doing Graff as well, but for looking at it, there was only like a handful of crews like in London that were really kind of popping off. And, you know, you had the Supreme team like in 1985 and the Trailblazers. And then a bit later on, you know, you had the London Giants, you had Chrome Angels, and you had Non-Stop Art as well. And what I noticed about the pieces from late 85 going into 86, it was very kind of like futuristic, very kind of space age looking.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest with you, like I never really gravitated towards that style. That's probably why I didn't really focus too much on the southeast stuff at the time, because, like you say, a lot of that seemed to be happening in that area, and you can probably quote me better there. But I was more focused on the New York style, as it were, and the only real kind of like place area that I really saw that strongly was Lalo, was like West London, you know, Ladbroke Grove and all around there, where there was like connections to New York back then with those guys. But I really did gravitate, and still to this day, a lot of people say, oh, you know, your style's old, played out, all the rest of it. But I'm all about preserving the culture. You know, like for me, it's important to keep that style alive. I'm not saying I'm doing a New York style, but I'm doing my version of a New York with a bit of London as well, because London had a very strong style back then also, you know.
Oh, big time.
So I think it's important to stick to your roots in a sense. I mean, obviously you've got to progress, but like I said earlier, you don't have to do some completely new style. You can adapt your own style to fit in with the modern sort of techniques and whatnot, and it all, generally speaking, it works, you know.
100%. And Kilo, what does hand style mean to you? I mean, for me, hand style is everything. You know, you got to have that wicked hand style, because sometimes you see pieces which look absolutely incredible, but then you look at the hand style on it, and it's pretty whack.
Totally. No, I'm the same. As for me, you know, again, I'm not saying this because I think I've got an amazing hand style, because I don't, but I just think that you have to practice. I mean, I like, in terms of hand style, I like many others used to like practice on bits of paper or whatever for hours, you know, and that's before I'd even think about going out and hitting it up somewhere. And it was only when I was satisfied and I felt it kind of was in the realms of what people were doing that I'd go out and do it. Now, like you said, I've seen pieces that are pretty good pieces, you know, like nicely executed, and then you look at the tag beside it and it looks like a 4-year-old's done it, and I'm like, really? And I think that again points back to people not having the knowledge, not understanding what this is really about, you know. And maybe there's a separation in modern terms now, in modern like techniques, where there seems to be people that just don't really care about that. They just want to put their name up regardless, you know, which I understand, but it's a shame. It's nice to see a nice stylish bit of bombing.
It looks brilliant. And you know, can you tell me about some of the hand styles that kind of like blew you away back in the mid 80s? I mean, for me, Artful Dodger's tag, his old school English calligraphy tag was mind blowing seeing that. And obviously, you know, there was like people like Cash from Tough Arts, Scarf and London Giants, Non-Stop and Chrome Angels, you know, there were so many, you know, and obviously, you know, people like Fume, ID Bomber, you know, Drax and Robbo and all them, you know, they all had wicked hand styles.
No, definitely. And I mean, I you know, for me personally, like I always refer back to the West Side, you know, scene, but like Casby, Rio 2, all the names I mentioned already, those guys, their styles were just so on point. But also the bits of the Southeast that I did see are unquestionably like Tough Arts, you know, all of those guys, they had those really distinct, and you could almost say what was south or what was west or whatever just from looking at tags. You know, nowadays you just don't really get that, because you've either got this kind of anti-Graff style, which is like just ugly, or everybody's trying to be the next Reebok or whoever it is that's big in the scene, you know. No, I think those guys, the West London guys, they really stood out to me in terms of style. You know, things that were done like those S's, everyone had that they did that kind of little loop at the top, and then, you know, like that, crazy S's and E's and stuff. You just don't see that.
Yeah. I mean, when I was seeing, like, you know, the Cash tag, the CAS, and on the end of his H, he had that little kind of squiggle that went round like that. It looked wicked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is what I mean, you know. And even things like that were very personal to the writer involved, you know, like the way you did certain things and where you placed them, like you said, putting a squiggle in a certain place, or a halo or crown or whatever it might be, all very personal to that writer. Yeah,
like when I used to do my style, I used to do like a little S. I'm not going to say what it is, like the S, and it was a bigger letter, bigger, and then big at the end with a two on the end, with a little squiggle, a little copyright sign, with a little squiggle underneath with 2 dots, and the little copy, you know, the copyright sign.
Yeah. Well, that was it. You know, that was you know, people putting stars and all sorts. There was some
Stars,
people, like clouds around it. You know, it's all part of the whole process of learning the styles, really. You know.
And
But,
Kilo, did you have like a favourite weapon of choice? You know, did you have like a favourite marker pen or a favourite spray paint?
Well, in terms of spray paint, I would say when I discovered Smooth Right, like that really did sort of open up a whole world in terms of getting outlines nice and, you know, neat and different colours or whatever, especially when you mix them. In terms of markers, like most others, like the one that sticks to my mind, apart from the torch pen that we were talking about earlier, is the Edding 850 or 950 or whatever. You know, that's
Edding 850s. Yeah, that was good. It used to get them in like the black and the red and the green and the navy.
Yeah. And they were like, you know, they were the tools of choice. But then I do remember as well when the whole self-made marker thing started up, and I had like, I think somebody gave it to me, probably Score or someone like that. But I had like, I've still got it somewhere. It's like a little glue pen, dip it down and then fill it up with Vivians or whatever ink you got. Just put it in a sock and like shake it around a bit, and then it turns out to be like this crazy juicy marker. That was one of my favourite things, but that was a homemade job, you know.
Yeah, we used to do it like you may have done it as well with. Do you remember the Kodak film cases? When you take a photograph,
put a mop in it. Yeah, I know what you mean.
You put it in, and also with the. Do you remember the blackboard marker? You'd wipe the chalk off. Like it was about like a 7 or an 8 inch tag, and you'd like squirt ink on it and like whack up some huge tag. You could only really do it on like bus stops because you know the tag was so like thick. Yeah,
and that's again, I think like. They produced that kind of chisel edge tag, didn't they? Which I know in the Southeast, the stuff I've seen, it had a lot of that sort of thing.
The chiseling style, was wicked because you get the thin bit at the top with the chisel going through it. Yeah, that chisel style.
If you had like a C, like scarf, obviously, or whatever, you had that kind of, like you say, that little top narrow bit, but then the sweep came down and just developed into this crazy wide sort of section, which is nice, stylish.
Yeah, that chiseling was wicked.
And creativity, you see, going back to that again, is hip hop. It's like making something out of nothing kind of thing, you know, which is obviously what it's all about.
Oh, without a doubt. And Kilo, you know, how did you come up with your name as well, Kilo?
Do you know, I think it was pretty much just accidentally. I kind of like, it's not the name I started out with. I used the name Kilo since I think it was 89, I think was when I started using that name. Prior to that, as I mentioned earlier, I was using the name Raz, which at the time I didn't even realise. I thought it was unique. I didn't realise about Raz TAT in New York and even Raz in London, you know, Raz Chain and all those guys. And it was actually, I had some other names as well, like I mentioned Nitro, Funkmaster, Tape One, Light, Load, Wire 69, loads of names. But when I settled on Kilo, it was actually after being at an event in a place called Bridlington in North Yorkshire. I think it was 89. I went up there with like all the Bristol guys, and I met Vulcan. Like Vulcan was there judging the competition. So
Vulcan from New York.
TAT, yeah, So basically, I'm running around with my little black book trying to catch tags and stuff. And I caught up with Vulcan, and I got him. I said, "Yo, can you sign my thing?" And they said, "Yeah. Well, who should I put?" And I put, "Can you put it to Raz?" You know, and he's TAT. So obviously, I've still got it somewhere. He wrote like his actual thing. It said, "Yo, Raz, change that fucking name, Vulcan TAT." And I still got that to this day.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And then I was like, right, okay. And then Kilo came about. It's probably like, you know, back then, wayward sort of late teenager, involved in all sorts of social activities, kind of, you know, where I'm going with this. So I kind of thought, yeah, that sounds quite cool. I hadn't heard of anyone using that name either, and I liked the letters. Then I found out not long after that there was Kilo in New York as well, from a crew called H2O in Brooklyn. But he was already set up, I was already set up, so we just learned to live with it, you know.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing, you know, sometimes it's so difficult to be 100% original because we can only learn so much history.
Yeah, well, this is it, you know. I mean, what I quite like is, again, technology's sort of presented itself to make it possible, but over the years, I've had a few people actually contact me from out of the blue saying, yo, you know, from wherever they are, Toronto, I don't know where they are, but across the world just saying like, yo, I write Kilo as well. I never even realised that you were like, and you've been going for so long or whatever. You're like, do you mind if I like put a number after it or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, of course, cool. You know, I wasn't the first, and I'm not going to be the last. So there's that kind of mutual. The fact they've reached out to me and sort of actually, rather than coming at me and saying change your name or whatever, you know, it's like, no, we can both get along, but just, you know, well, the life's too short for all that kind of nonsense.
It's all about respect.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I'm getting at, you know, the whole fact that they've actually given me that respect. And I reached out to the Kilo in Brooklyn H2O crew that I was talking about, but I never heard back from him, unfortunately, because I was thinking, well, look, he's done a lot. That guy's done a lot of work. I still get people now, because I've got that New York connection through the crews I rep. I still get Americans every now and then saying, yo, I remember when you did that whole car on the one line, and I'm like, I wish, you know.
I was going to talk about crews as well, Kilo. I mean, obviously you're in Sinstars crew. I mean, how did that come around, and what was the reason behind the name?
Well, the Sinstars, as a first point, was really a case that back in when I moved back to London from Exeter, I moved to London in '91. I was already in connection with Score, Tenor, Len, rest in peace, and Keen. You know, there's a lot of people I was already around and hanging out with, Graff, another one. So we would all paint on weekends, and sometimes we'd link together, sometimes we'd just happen to bump into each other. And one day, like, Dreff and I were discussing things on the top deck of a bus. And we kind of came up with this idea to try and form like a super crew, if you like, in a sense. Like, all these people that were going out and painting, why don't we all link up together and do it together? And then we could do productions and things like that. So that's kind of like how Sinstars came about. It was like an amalgamation of TRC, which was Score's crew, Keen, AWE, you know, myself. I had the crew SSA, Southside Alliance, back from my Exeter days. So we all kind of brought it together. We also had the Reading guys, Ascot guys, through the connection with Dreff. So that was Scuba, Coes, all those sort of guys. SNC crew they were. So it was really kind of like a one crew that morphed other crews together. And then the New York thing, that came later, just through being connected to people, you know, and invited. None of those crews did I ever ask to be part of. They all approached me and said they've been checking my stuff out and like what I do and this, that, or the other. So, you know, mutual respect again. And
what's the full list of the New York crews you're in? Obviously, the Xmen.
Yeah, so basically it kind of went like this in order, if you like. I got invited to be to rep for FBA. So after doing my 6-month probation, I was then invited into the crew. Then I was invited into a crew called BMK, which is Beyond Mankind Crew, which is based kind of Queens based, I believe. Then there was another crew called SSB, which is a really old crew, like late 60s, early 70s, Soul Stoned Brothers, which is a crew that Lee Quinones was part of as well. So I rep for them. That's more of a kind of, you know, it's not really an active crew, but it's just being part of it. It's kind of nostalgic or whatever. Then there was a crew, where am I up to now? Yeah, MW, Most Wanted, which is Bomb 5's crew, Bomb 5 from Rocksteady crew. He's like one of the, I think he's the Prez, well, now he might be, but yeah. Then there was, as you said, Xmen. That was more Xmen and Chaos Incorporated. They're two crews they're like the most recent crews that I've repped, really. That was as a result of when the Xmen came over. They did a little tour a couple of years ago. I think you met them, didn't you?
I took them.
Yeah, you did the hookup, innit? Yeah, in the cab.
I took them on a tour around London. Yeah, on like a Graff kind of tour. Yeah.
So basically, at that visit was when they put me down with the crew.
That was with Python.
Yeah, that's it. Python, Kenji Python. He actually reps for my crew now, so he reps for SIN in New York. So
does he? Wow. Yeah, big shout out to Python, Pi1 as
well. Yeah, definitely. And you know, the thing for me, like in terms of inspirations, Web One, he was he's someone I really, really admire his style. You know, like, his stuff is just so kind of like, I think it's because it's so comparative to Dondi. It's like an evolution of Dondi's style. Same with Doc or Arab, you know, like that you can see where they're coming from kind of thing. So to have Webb sort of invite me to rep for his crew was just like, you know, it's going back to that whole FBA thing again, how I felt. It's kind of like mad.
And Kilo, can you also tell me about the way paint spray has actually changed from back in the day? Because I mean, you know, I'm clueless with this kind of stuff because I stopped doing it in like around 1986. So I know, you know, from the Buntlack days, it's really kind of changed a lot. So can you tell me, obviously the nozzles must have changed, the thickness of the paint?
Yeah, I mean, it's all changed, like you said, you know, back in the early days, the car plan, Duplicolor, whatever days, we'd literally, to make fat caps, for example, we'd get a standard cap and we'd like get the stem and we'd make the groove wider in the stem, and then I'd get a needle and put it in the dot and try and widen that out, and it was a shit fat cap, but that's kind of like, it did a bit better than what I had. So we do things like that. Then we'd have like, obviously, the Smooth Right evolution came about, and I fortunately at the time, this must have been I was using that before 91, but in 91 I moved to back to London, and I was fortunate to meet Info KTC, rest in peace, another like amazing style writer from Ladbroke Grove area. And he showed me, I'd always see his pieces and think, how the hell's he got these mad outline colours, you know? Because as far as I knew, there wasn't really much paint that was very good for outlining back then other than Smooth Right. What he was doing, he was mixing the Smooth Rights together. Yeah, so he was getting like, he showed me, he gave me like a little practice session in his bedroom at his place. Literally one can upright, one can upside down, got the little cemented nozzle, one upside down, you know. And I used to mix up Smooth Rights, and I had a little book. I've still got that somewhere. I'm a bit of a hoarder. I've got all my stuff like buried somewhere deep. But I used to do like dots of the colour I'd make into this book, and then I'd say what the ratio was, you know, like 2 parts pink, 1 part white or whatever. So I came up with all these colours. So mixing paint was mad, very messy, and a lot of people have actually hurt themselves doing it. Sometimes people would freeze one can, heat the other can up. You imagine putting a can on the stove, boiling a can. There's a writer called Char who had an experience with that. I'll let him explain for himself. But yeah, not the greatest. Yeah. We had to use what we had. Nowadays, fast forward, you've got like so many different brands of spray paint, you know, all with like low pressure, high pressure, gloss, matte, whatever, sparkly bits inside it. You know, it's kind of made it easy in a sense. You've also got like a lot of different caps. So back when we were painting, you had the cap that came on a Duplicolor was the one that we used to do the whole piece pretty much, you know, maybe put a Jack Black cap on it or a WD-40 cap or whatever, but pretty much use the stock caps. And as I say now, just like it's like going into a candy shop, you can just literally, you're spoiled for choice. You know?
Well, I've seen some people doing tags with these fat caps, and I'm sure the tag is a bit, or the spray of the can has been coming out looks like about 1 foot or 2 feet wide.
Oh, yeah. Ultra wides, yeah, the ultra wides. They're amazing, like you say. They're like, a lot of the guys that are painting steel use those for like whole cars and stuff, because if you've ever seen any of the YouTube clips, you'll see they use their left and their right hand, and they literally blast the whole car in like 5 minutes or something with those things. But they kill the paint. All those fat caps, like if you do use them, you burn the can out in no time, especially those ultra wide things you're talking about. You get about fucking 30 seconds out of that before it's run out, you know.
And one question I've just thought of, which I've never really heard being asked before, is back in the day, you know, you used to rack some of your paint. Some of your paint, but nowadays you go into I think you go into paint shops and it's all behind like mesh and you can't get to it.
Yeah, there's a few exceptions to that which are worth noting. One of them, most notably, without meaning to name checking, but I'm obviously about to, would have to be VIP in Tottenham, because that shop, when I first went into that shop, I couldn't believe it, because all the paint is just there. You can just pick it up and, like, you know. I even said to Bill, the guy that runs it, like, how do you get away with this? And he said, like, bruv, you know, take a look outside, look at the flats. I know every man in them flats, you know. Anybody wants to cause me any stress, they ain't getting very far. So, but yeah, that was an exception. But like you say, most places now, you just go in there and there's just an abundance of, you can get about 16 shades of the same colour, you know.
Yeah. So where I'm going to get to with this is basically, you have to really kind of pay for your paint nowadays. So looking at your production work of a full piece, you've got like, you've got your letter in the kilo, you've got the 3D, you've got the background, you've got some characters. I mean, say for like a full-blown production piece, how much money would that cost you as a writer to buy the spray paint to do that one piece?
I mean, it's probably better to base it off of like a piece, like a one-man piece, rather than a big production. Still be because it's easier for me to say. But I would say, for me personally, probably like 30 to 40 quid. That doesn't. I mean, that's like, sounds like a lot. Maybe it doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm working off like 8 cans of paint, something like that. But for me personally, what I do is when I paint, I will, like, most of the time I don't even plan the colours. I just look at what I've got most of, and if I've got a lot of this colour, I'll use that as my base colour to lay down first. And then the piece I did last weekend, I've probably still got a quarter of a can left, so I'll use that for doing detail. You know what I mean? You just got to use your savvy.
No, exactly. So when you're starting out, you probably have quite a bit of paint that you pay for. But as things progress, you probably have little bits of colouring where you can use on other pieces.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing for me as well, touching on the racking thing, I was always shit at racking. Like I was rubbish at racking. I tried to rack a can of paint one day from like B&Q or whatever in Exeter. Went for the old down the sleeve job on my jacket. Only thing is, I forgot that the jacket didn't have elasticated arms. So as I'm walking right near the cash tills, the can just falls out. And I'm like, so off I've gone, quick time.
Yeah, you got nabbed. I think when I was interviewing Scarf from the legendary Tough Arts crew. Scarf and the Tough Arts guys, they had such a reputation in London that they got the name called the Buntlack Kings, because what they tried to do was starve London of Buntlack.
Really?
Yeah.
He put up, I saw on Instagram, I think it was this morning, Scarf actually put up a picture of the London Graphics Centre, which is obviously a nod back to the Buntlack days.
Yeah. But there was a few other shops like Paper Chase and a few other shops.
No, but like for me, racking was, like I say, I was fortunate as well because I never really was unemployed in a sense, because when I left school, I did an apprenticeship as a maintenance fitter. So I got the job after that, and then I was earning money from 17 or whatever. So I was okay paying for a few cans of paint. And also we got involved in like project work, because we got noticed for the artwork we were doing. So we get commissions and stuff, like a youth club or whatever it might be. And obviously you put your hustle on, you order more paint, blah, blah, blah. And it fuels your passion,
Yeah, because I mean, you've got the fever. You absolutely love and breathe, and you're like a sponge. You soak in all that information, anything to do with graffiti. I mean, another person that's like that is Score. I mean, Score is, he is like a sponge of Graff. I mean, he really soaks it in. I mean, he's unbelievable.
Well, fortunately for me, going back to Bridlington '89, the event in North Yorkshire, that's where I first met Score. Like, Score was there with a guy called Dome. I didn't even meet Score, I met Dome, he's one of his friends. And like, we connected, became pen pals like we did back then, trading pictures and all that. And then through Dome, I met Score, and then me and Score just got on straight away, So I've known him since like 1989.
And what a nice geezer. Big shout out to Score.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, like you say, he to me is kind of like, he has become like the epitome of graffiti, or UK graffiti, whatever you want to say, because he's out there, he paints on all surfaces, if you know what I'm saying. Like, he hits all surfaces. He's producing books. He's like a sponge of knowledge, So definitely major props to Score, and Tenor, another one who I met through Score, who was his partner in crime at the time. These people are influential. These people have put a lot into the culture, and it's nice that people like yourself and other people, perhaps who aren't as so tight to them as on a friendship basis, acknowledge their input. You know, it's important.
Well, 100%. I mean, you know, I'm not really into graffiti anymore. I kind of gave that up in '86. But I mean, to see you guys progress that I found out over the years, you know, it's amazing. And you're still really kind of proactive.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, you know, and it comes back again to the name thing, you know, like if you stand still for too long, you're just going to get you're going to get your name taken, you're going to lose your kudos, your credit, you know. So I try and paint as much as I can, which isn't often now, to be honest with you. But I still have the fire, you know, like the fire is still within me. And as long as that's there, I'll still keep going, you know. It's all about getting out there and putting yourself about kind of thing. I'm into traveling as well. I don't just like to paint my local spot, you know. I've got a road trip coming up next week, which means I'm going to be painting in Wolverhampton, then I'm going to be painting in Taunton, then I'm painting in Exeter, then I'm painting in Bristol, you know. So I've got a little road trip planned, and I like to do that, especially to connect to my friends and stuff, and drop a quick piece at the same time. And then it's putting your name out on a UK, you know, spectrum, rather than just in whatever town it is or city it is you live.
And Kilo, you know, that's the beauty of things like Instagram and Facebook, where you can kind of connect with other writers from all around the world. Yeah,
and this is the thing, you know, like I'm a self-proclaimed media whore, if you like. You know, I wake up in the morning, literally. Like you ask my missus, I wake up in the morning, get my phone, which is beside me, check Instagram. It's sad, but it's how I do. And like, if you're connected to people in, you know, other countries, it's a great way of staying connected, you know.
Oh, without doubt.
The only problem I find is it does take away the personal interaction a little bit. But then again, I can't interact with somebody in New York because I'm sitting here in fucking Cambridge, you know. So, no, if you use it and don't let it consume you, it's a great thing. But I see people posting up stuff that's just ridiculous, you know, and they're kind of, you can see it's not good for their mentality to be involved in this stuff. You've got to be mature and to understand when too much is too much, you know.
And also, Kilo, very, very quickly, I mean, obviously, you know, we've covered quite a bit about Graff, but also, you know, you was also a B-boy as well. You know, you was a break boy. So, you know, who was inspiring you as a break? I mean, from New York, would it be crews like New York City Breakers, Dynamic Rockers, Rocksteady Crew?
Yeah, all of those, you know. But the thing is, as much as those guys inspired me, which obviously they did, because that's our first sort of contact to that scene, if you like. Again, I was fortunate to have my cousin Zeus, who was also involved in. He wasn't really breaking, but he was part of a crew called SAS crew in southwest London, which I think stood for Strawberry All Stars or something ridiculous like that. But basically, Bionic from London Posse he went to the same school as my cousin. So I had all these connections via that. So not only the New York thing, but people like the B-Boys from Wolverhampton, they blew me away. You know, London All Stars, Live to Break. Those people probably had more influence on me than the New York guys even. You know, the obvious ones at the beginning, Buck 4 from Rocksteady Crew. I used to do Turtle. That was what my move was, that I tried to adapt and do things with Turtle. Buck 4 is like the Turtle master, you know, arguably, but I would say so, yes. Kuriaki, both of them rest in peace, you know, amazing B-boys, and I can only imagine what they'd be like if they were alive with us today, you know. But yeah, there was a lot of influences, a lot of stuff going on back then, especially in the UK.
Oh, big time, yeah. And just quickly going back to the because we've got to round it up soon. Going back to the out of all the pieces you've seen throughout the years, has there been kind of like a handful of pieces that have really kind of blown you away? I mean, obviously pieces from like Dondi and Scene, and I mean, you know, Scheme as well. I had the Scheme-O-Matic train as well, which was incredible. Yeah, has there been like a handful of pieces which really kind of influenced you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of them I've mentioned already, and that would have to be the Sab K's whole car. And then there's the obvious ones from the book as well, you know, the Wild Style car, loads of them. But the one that really stood out to me was that Sab K's one. And also the Donkey Kong whole car, which again was by Sun One, and I forget who else. But that was a link to FBA as well, because Sun One's FBA. But then if you look in like London, there was a wall that was done at Latimer Road called that was a Power Chaos. It said Power Chaos, and it was by Prime and Crime 151, I think. And that wall is amazing, even by today's standards. That wall blows most things I see apart. It's just like full background, nice letter styles, character. You know. Then
what year was that, Kilo? Was that kind of 87? 87?
Yeah, I would 87 comes to my mind straight away. I would say it must have been around that time. Then you've got most of the pieces around that time that were done in the Hall of Fame, Ladbroke Grove. That was when pieces done there were pieces. You know, you didn't get no nonsense in that place at that time. So everything I used to go there. I used to come to London once a month, pretty much, from Exeter. And I'd always do a little pilgrimage of the certain spots that I knew, Ladbroke Grove, Hall of Fame being one of them, you know, and I was never disappointed until we got to like the late 90s, 2000s. But yeah, everything back then was just, but the ones that's like Power Chaos, the wall I spoke about, trying to think now, there was obviously trains as well that were done in London that were amazing. All the Cold Crust Duke stuff, Bowman Cast, anything by Cast is just unbelievable. Shock, Mize, rest in peace. Those guys as well, you know. There's too many to mention really, but as I say, the ones I've spoke of, they're the ones that are in my brain.
And big shout out to all those writers from back then who were, you know, pivotal in growing this kind of, you know, scene in London and the UK. Big shout out to all of you.
Definitely. In fact, there's two cars, London tubes, I remember now, which that definitely blew me away. By Fuel and Prime, two like untold London kings, you know. 1,000 Sacrifices to Revolt and Mushroom Madness. There was like a married whole car by those two. Unbelievable. And I caught it on Edgware Road purely by accident at Christmas. Just like, wow.
Yeah, blew you away.
Oh, mental.
And Kilo, just to kind of wind it up now, I mean, basically, music is so powerful. Now, would you say that music or the hip-hop kind of culture, graffiti and all that b-boying, saved your life or kind of brought you out of places where you was at a very kind of low point and it kind of uplifted you and helped you through some dark times?
I would say, but both in a sense, you know, maybe not so dark in terms of stuff, but the thing is, you know, I was back in the days, I was like anybody else. I was into like Adam and the Ants, I was into pop music, I was into all that sort of stuff. But then I kind of got introduced to jazz funk and I dabbled with that, not in deeply, just the commercial stuff really. So music has always been a massive part of my life, and the progression into hip hop, electro, hip hop, blah, 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 funk. It's all relevant, and without it I don't feel that I would be the person I am in terms of like my careers and stuff like that. Most of that has come from hip hop as well, you know, from doing graffiti workshops like as an occasional basis and then being asked to work full-time in a school from the back of that work. Even when I was an engineer doing maintenance fitting, you know, music, hip hop, it was a massive part of my life, and without it I wouldn't have. I can't even imagine, you know. I was thinking about it this morning, just while I was lying in bed, that where would I be without all this? Because my partner, she's not from that background at all. You know, most of the other women I've had in my life have been like hip hop chicks or whatever. But to be honest with you, that hasn't really worked. Like my fiance Paula, she understands the passion, but she's not a part of it, you know. But at the same time, she's perfectly knowledgeable about what it is that makes me tick, you know what I mean? So yeah, without hip hop I'd probably be in a pub getting smashed out my head and trying to fight and getting beaten up.
and Kilo, last one, is there kind of like a positive message that you can send to like the younger generation?
Yeah, it goes back to what we said earlier really. Knowledge, do your research.
Knowledge is king.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, now there's so many different outlets to gain that knowledge. You've got things like yourself that you're doing, you know, Killer Keller, people, there's other people doing these sorts of things. All these things are relevant, in addition to which you've got like the internet. Get out there and research things. Don't just take it for granted that, you know, that guy in your neighbourhood was the first guy to do what he's doing and it's amazing and you want to copy everything he's done, because he's doing that for a reason. You know, he got into this from knowledge, let's hope. So yeah, do your research, speak to people, you know, like don't just don't just rely on what you read online. Even get out there and meet people. If you get the opportunity, get to New York, maybe try and connect to people over there. It's very easy to do that now. You know, knowledge is power, and that's the end of it all, really. You know,
knowledge is king. Yeah. Listen, Kilo, it's been an absolute incredible interview. I know it's our second time round, but listen, anybody that's watching this, please subscribe to this channel. Press the subscribe button down there somewhere. I've interviewed T-Kid, Scheme, Score, Scar from obviously from Tough Arts, Public Enemy, DJ Cash Money, DJ Qbert, Man Parish, Cosmo D from Nucleus, Rodney P London Posse, Skinny Man, and so DJ Pogo, DJ Cutmaster Swift. There's so many interviews within this channel, so please go and subscribe. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this interview, Kilo. It's been brilliant chatting to you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, man. And like I say, it's nice to be able to do it without getting soaked or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering about the thunderstorms now, the electrical storm. I thought it was going to be like wiped out.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Always a pleasure, like I say. And just remember, the one thing I would say above and beyond as well, because I've got to give me a little shameless plug, is always write your own story. Yeah, write your own story. Don't follow what everybody else is doing. Do your own twist on it. Yes.
Very, 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 very quickly, Kilo. You've got a book as well, haven't you? Have you got the book there? Yeah,
that's what I was just showing you actually. That, which is like, unfortunately, I can't like take orders on it anymore now because, as I mentioned, I'm not going to go all the way through it. But yeah, it's like a book of my story, pretty much what we just discussed, really. But I am hoping to, with the help of Score actually and a couple other people, I'm hoping to find a better printer place that I can get some more done. So hopefully it'll be on sale again soon. But a few people have got it. You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely wicked interview, Kilo. And for anyone watching, do not go away because at the end, in a minute or so, we're going to be going into Kilo's archives and showing loads of his old photographs that he took back in the day. So yeah, don't go anywhere and check this out. Listen, Kilo, stay safe, my man, and keep corona free. Keep wearing the mask. Keep safe out there.
Indeed, and yourself, Steve. Pleasure.
Peace, my man.
This is the transit system. They don't like it to be defaced, and they will at times try and go to the extreme and try and apprehend you. The subway system is a very old one, and I've personally explored some tunnels, and I've found rooms where maps that were so old it might have been like the first train line that New York City had. Call it what you want. Just a lot of rock, a lot of steel. Tomb, dungeon, under the city. A lot of trains, a lot of fun, a lot of art. Art that's going to be a part of New York City's history forever. Oh, wow, check it out, a whole bar, man. Yo, what? Check it out, man. Yo, look at that. Yo, a lot of writers have been down here, you can tell. Graffiti all over the place. Oh, check it out. Years ago, was so